Shalom, my friends. Well, it's December 21st, traditionally associated with the beginning of winter. Now, if you're a little bit worried about the darkness which is traditionally associated with this time of the year, good news. Sunday evening, we light the first lights of Chanukah. And the proper greeting for this season is Chag Urim Samayach. Have a very happy Festival of Lights. And speaking of worrying, I apologize for my voice being a little bit out of kilter. Reese and I were in Chicago this past week attending the biennial convention of the Union of Reformed Congregations and celebrating, by the way, the official launch of my second book, Deepening the Dialogue. What a launch it was. It was pretty exciting. I think that the frigid temperatures of Chicago gifted me with a temporary case of laryngitis. I apologize. But if you want to talk to me about coming into your community and speaking about the book and conducting conversations about the future of Israel based upon a very different approach, please be in touch now. It's a good time to set calendar. Our Sedra is VAYEISHEV, Genesis 37:1 and following. VAYEISHEV. And Jacob settled in the land of his fathers, sojourning in the land of Canaan. 2 weeks ago we read VAYEISHEV, and Jacob left. And last week we read VAYISHLACH, and Jacob sent. Lots of strong activity, but now VAYEISHEV. Jacob settled down. You can just feel yourself relaxing. At last, no more ladder and angels. No more cheating of one's father-in-law. No more wrestling with an angel. No more potential battles between brothers. Now, finally, Jacob settles down. VAYEISHEV. Okay, so let's allow ourselves a brief sigh of relief, but not so fast. Because Jacob was not settling into life by some Middle Eastern version of Golden Pond. Far from it. VAYEISHEV seductively introduces us to a major section of the book of Genesis that sees Jacob's sons fiercely competitive with Joseph being sold into slavery, and in turn, that act will lift the curtain on what will be the Israelite enslavement in Egypt. Without the quiet of VAYEISHEV, we never would have gotten to the drama of the exodus from Egypt and the birth of the Jewish people. But there is a lesser-known story hidden within our text this week. It's a fascinating tale about the family of Judah, one of Jacob's sons. You can find this story in chapter 38. Judah has 3 sons. His oldest son marries Tamar. That son dies. Judah's second son refuses to perform what is called a levirate marriage, in which he would marry his deceased brother's childless widow. Judah then asks Tamar to wait until Judah's third son, the youngest son, is old enough to marry. She should remain alone, a widow, until the levirate marriage could be consummated. Tamar could not disagree with her father-in-law directly, but the years pass, and she remains an unmarried widow. So Tamar carries out a brilliant plan. In disguise, she seduces Judah, her father-in-law, and she becomes pregnant. When Judah hears that Tamar is pregnant, he wants to have her burned alive as a harlot. Tamar then, in a really clever way, quietly reveals to Judah, guess what? You're the father. It all ends well. Judah acknowledges paternity. The levirate requirement is fulfilled. The family embraces Tamar, and then we quickly get back to the story of Joseph and his brothers and all that would follow. The rabbis many centuries on really loved Tamar. They liked how she handled a very difficult situation. And the rabbis, in fact, commended Tamar so much that they recommended that she become a model for our own behavior. In Talmud Bava Metzia it says, "It is better that a person throw himself into a fiery furnace than to shame his neighbor in public." Though badly wronged, Tamar demonstrated commendable concern not to humiliate Judah. The Talmud adds the following 4 statements. Whoever shames his neighbor in public, it is as if he sheds his blood. One who publicly humiliates another forfeits his place in the world to come. And know whom you shame. For when you shame your neighbor, you are shaming the image of God. And finally, that every one of you be very careful of the dignity of others. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks quotes these passages with obvious approval. He even adds one more citation. Quote, "Be wary of ona'at devarim," verbal oppression, ona'at devarim, which is the act of reminding a person of a past that they may find shameful. Tamar didn't proclaim to all of those in hearing distance, "Hey, listen up. Judah, my father-in-law, slept with me, treating me like a harlot, and he is the father of my children." Rather, she used quiet signs and signals to remind Judah of their liaison, and thus the matter was quietly resolved. Lord Sacks goes on to praise Judaism's insistence on protecting human dignity, of avoiding doing any psychological harm to anyone else through words, ona'at devarim. He further states that loss of dignity is like the loss of life. He powerfully concludes his presentation by reminding us that a family tree was created when Tamar gave birth, and that King David was the 10th generation in that family tree. Lord Sacks's concluding words: Tamar took her sense of shame and used it to sensitize herself against ever shaming others. What a powerful lesson in morality, in empathy, in ethical behavior. And yet, this lesson left me deeply troubled. Of course we should avoid shaming others publicly. Of course we need to realize that shaming can cause more profound injuries than breaking arms or breaking legs. Embarrassing someone, shaming them publicly, causing their cheeks to burn red. The rabbis associated all of that with a capital crime. Shaming is bloodshed. Of course I agree. And I'm aware of and support the Talmud's admonitions. So what's my problem? What if public shaming is the only recourse for someone who is not among society's privileged? What if calling someone out publicly for acts, while perhaps not punishable by the law, are nevertheless deeply injurious? Should we tell such injured parties to follow Tamar's example and to use the shame to which they have been exposed as a means of sensitizing them against shaming others? Is that really the right answer? Always? You obviously know where all of this is taking me when adults who had been sexually harassed or assaulted as children come forward after all statutes of limitations have passed. Should we counsel them to stay silent and not publicly embarrass or shame those who had victimized them? Should women or men who have suffered harassment and humiliation be advised to strengthen their hold on empathic concern for others and not publicly denounce those who had so grievously wronged them? The Talmud, as approved by Lord Sachs, seems to make no space for public humiliation as an act of justice. Is such a concern for publicly humiliating another sometimes no more than opening a doorway for such behavior to persist? Publicly humiliating someone is wrong, obviously wrong, really wrong. I get that. But what about those instances when public humiliation is the only pathway to justice? Is public humiliation then not to be avoided, but rather actively embraced? Tamar was discreet. Judah was protected. King David one day would be born. Public humiliation can be and has been abused. It is a very blunt weapon. But for those who are powerless, it might very well be a necessary and praiseworthy weapon. I say this with a great sense of pain, but with a pain less searing than that felt by too many victims in our world. Tamar and Judah, a tale for our own times. That's it. Shabbat Shalom, my friends, and Chag Urim Samayach. See you next week with a voice